So let's move on to Battlefield 1. Now this, starting off with the good stuff, or the random stuff, PS4 Pro for Battlefield Run looks great. It looks super great. I really am pleased with it. I did play the, the beta on PC at max settings, so I can kind of compare the two, sort of. And I'd have to say that it's definitely not ultra level PC settings, for sure. But it does have the sharpness and crispness overall that you'd expect from ultra settings on PC. However, texture detail, stuff like texture detail and the kind of pop-in you'll see with like grass and stuff, that's definitely more akin to a console version. Also, geometry detail is lower. But overall, that kind of stuff, you're not really super gonna notice when tons of things are blowing up all around you. So that's kind of fine. And the sharpness of it is gorgeous. It is very gorgeous. Super enjoyed that. How beautiful it is. It is a beautiful game anyway. And PS4 Pro, it runs like a dream at basically a solid 60. It's great. That's great. So with the visuals out of the way, we'll move on, and we'll go on a sliding scale of good to bad. Also, the destructibility is one of the best things that this game has going for it, and that's kind of been Battlefield's thing for a while now. No slouch here. It's incredible, the stuff they can have, especially some of these missions later, or like the first mission, or story, or whatever, where you're in a tank, and you're just crashing through buildings and blowing shit up. That's awesome. It's really cool to see what you can do with the terrain. Love that. That's awesome. But as we start diving into these stupid flamethrower guys, we start diving into the actual gameplay, that's where I kind of become less of a fan of this game. There's a lot of people talking about it when it came out 3 or so weeks ago, about the story's so good, the campaign's incredible, etc., etc. And so I finished the campaign, and you know, it takes about, I don't know. Oh, I get blown up here. It's kind of funny. I'm like, oh no, there's a grenade. It takes about 6.5, 7 hours maybe. I didn't feel like I was rushing through it. I wasn't exploring a lot. There's some things you can find, but they unlock stuff for multiplayer, and I'm not gonna really play. Like, I'm not into it for that. So I didn't. And plus, there's no leveling up. There's no incentive to explore. So I didn't really feel like risking exploration when I could get killed was worth it. Now, that's just a side thing. I'm also not very good. Look at how terrible I am. The shooting and the gunplay and moving around in a tank, flying around in a plane, great. Very well done. However, there's so many strange pacing issues with this game. So there's 5 different storylines besides this tutorial thing. So there's 5 storylines. They're all completely independent of each other except that they take place in World War I. And I can't help but feel like that's really a detriment. It doesn't. I love the idea of a bunch of different storylines you just kind of pick through, but they're so disparate, and they have their own little stupid dumb shit of like, some of them are an hour. Like the longest one I think took me an hour and a half, maybe a little longer, and the shortest one is an hour to finish. And in this hour and a half, you have the intro cutscene, you have a couple in the middle, and then you have one at the end. And they all try to be so cinematic and war-y and cutesy, and it's good, but it doesn't have any emotional resonance, because I've literally been with these people for an hour tops. So, for instance, the plane one starts, and you do the little first training mission on the plane, and then it has this cutscene where it's like, oh, this guy I'm with, he sure is naive. And then, 30 minutes later, there's a payoff for that, where the guy he called naive, not to his face, but called naive. He looked at the other guy and was like, "You must think I'm naive, but I'm da 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 da. I know you're not who you say you are." And I'm like, well, that was a great payoff. Had this been hours later, and I developed an interesting relationship with these guys, instead, it feels almost like, oh, this is perfect. If you were watching a 10-episode season of a show, right? And you picked half of episode 4 and half of episode 8. So the first half of 4 and the last half of 8. And you took those parts and you just watched that. That one episode, which is half of 2 separate episodes. That's what each of these stories are. They're really just like a chunk you took out of a larger story that has characters that already existed and in most cases will exist way past there. And you don't know anything about them. You kind of learn a little about them. They do the little cutesy thing and then it's over. And I'm left looking at it going, okay, alright, he was a good pilot, okay. Like, oh, that guy died, alright, well, I only knew him for an hour. He seemed cool, I guess. I don't know. If I'd played 3 hours with this character, I might have been more invested. Just saying that. Everything seems to kind of just barely get started and it's over. And because of it, the whole pacing of everything just doesn't feel right to me. It also has weird. That's another thing. Because these can be played out of order, there's no rising difficulty. There's no way to have callbacks that make sense. Because the naive callback thing, and there are many callbacks like that throughout each campaign, they're all self-contained in their own little story. Instead of having one single-player umbrella where you could have callbacks at different moments, they all have to exist in their own thing, and they can be done in any order, meaning that they all kind of start you out at difficulty level 1 and ramp up from there. They never get to super difficult. They all kind of at the end do get much more difficult, but it never fully gets. It felt like I was going through the motions with a lot of them. I was like, oh no, I'm stuck on here. I'm like, I guess I'm stuck on here. Like, I don't know. Like why does it matter? None of it matters because I don't know who any of these people are. And I'm in their lives for, oh, this guy's he's going rogue. Okay, like, well, that sucks. But, I mean, I'm only an hour into this campaign and it's only got 15 minutes left. So it must not be that important, right? And so while the gameplay is really good, even though I could never get the little bayonet charge to work for some reason, I don't know why, the gameplay is a lot of fun. And there's one that, like, the tank one's fine. It's weird to start the game off with a tank mission. And then there's some stealth. I like the stealth. It's basic, but it's fun. It's fun enough. I think there's tons of games that do stealth better. I mean, usually those games are more stealth games, but still. There's a lot of stealth, and it really behooves you to use stealth because shooting around is kind of difficult in a lot of instances. Or like, I don't want everyone in the army shooting after me, especially if there's one flamethrower guy. He can really fuck things up. I think one flamethrower guy who somehow is armored. I don't know how a gas mask makes you invulnerable to bullets to the face. So anyway, you have the tank mission, which is primarily tank and stealth gameplay. It's fun, it's fine. Then you have the plane, and it's primarily plane and a little bit of on-foot stealth stuff. And I played through those too, and I'm like, this is really strange. It just doesn't add up. A Battlefield game or any first-person shooter, this doesn't seem like what I thought it was going to be. The third one is basically all shooting, and that's a good time. It starts to have weird difficulty spikes, where like there's one moment where you're on a turret and you're shooting down planes that I feel like is way more difficult than it needs to be, especially considering what you just did wasn't that difficult. And I kept dying because the gun was overheating, and I'm like, who the fuck cares? Like, this isn't even fun to do anymore. Like, it was cool the first time I popped into it. I don't know. Take that for what it is. So that mission's all shooting. That's cool. Mission 4, stealthy and a lot of shooting. And Mission 5, more stealth and a little bit of shooting. It ends with a lot of shooting. And it just kind of ends. Also because there's 5 stories that are completely separate from each other. There's no narrative like, yeah, we did it at the end. Each story has its own, like, we overcame the odds in this one instance. Each one has that. And it's a smaller one. There's never the, oh, we just beat the final boss. Like, oh, we just stabbed Hitler in the face. Yeah. It's more like, oh, we just took that city back. Like, all right, the war continues. And I understand, like, that is World War One. It is not a happy time at all. But it really never gets there. And this guy reminisces with his gloves. I'm like, okay, all right. I can't help but feel like a more focused, not a single player that has to follow one character, but one that has to be played in an order and maybe is out of order and has some dramatic tension longer than 10 minutes could have helped this a lot. I mean, people were talking about this game like it is one of the best single player campaigns in years, and all I have to say about it is there's some cool explosions. I really liked when that train blew up. You know, like that's my takeaway. In 6 months, I'll barely remember this campaign. Like all the desert missions were cool. I really liked those, and I liked shooting some planes and stuff. Like, that's cool. And then in a year from now, I'll look back at this game and be like, oh yeah, that came out. Like, I'm not going to remember this at all. It really is just kind of fine. It's just alright. Now, the multiplayer, I have played, and I do like it. I'm terrible. But I do think the multiplayer is really good and really fun. Especially if you have a group. That's great. That's fun. But people are coming all over themselves for this Battlefield 1 single player, and I don't get it. I really think it's fine. It's good. It's fun. If you get the game, you're probably going to like it. It's not bad. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just fine. It's just fine. You know, it really... I mean, at the start of this review, I said that the PS4 Pro editions are great. And that's probably my favorite part. The game looks great. Yay! I mean, full disclosure, I redboxed this game for 3 days or whatever. So for $9 plus tax, oh, it's worth it. But if you're not going to play the multiplayer, there is absolutely no reason to buy this game. At $60 or $40, maybe $30 if you're just like, I probably like it more than you did. You know, like I don't see any reason to. It's short, as I said, 6.5-ish hours. It's not that amazing. The shooting's good, but I guess you could play through it again. If you're not going to play the multiplayer, this is not for you. Like, to buy. To rent, sure. Experience it. I don't even know if I could say everyone should play it. It just kind of was like, alright. I don't see it. I don't see what everyone was so excited and impressed by. I feel like I've played countless better games this year. Even stuff like Doom. I wasn't wild about Doom, but Doom is a better game than this. Like, just from a mechanics level. It's also 5 times as long, feels like. It's like a 15-hour game. This is barely, not even 7. It's like, there's more meat there. It's more interesting. It's more fun to play moment to moment. Even though this is a lot of fun, it's hard to feel like there's one of these stories. It's hard to feel sorry that your brother died when I just met you. I know your brother's already dead, and oh, shocker, the hour-long story of this ends with you finding your brother dead. Who would have thunk it? Like, of course that's how it ended. I don't care. Who cares about any of these people? How? How could you care about them? You barely know anything. Half the time you're spent just shooting stuff. You don't get any character. It's like trying so hard to be a character-focused thing. This first one has a lot of cutscenes and actually does it the best, I would say, in terms of characterization and all that. And then maybe the fourth one with the Australian guy. Maybe. That's good characters too. But the rest of them, I mean, who was the third one? Oh, that's the Italian guy, yeah. So the second one's the plane. Those guys are dumb. And the fifth one's good, but not for characterization. They don't really have characters. They're just mythical figures, Lawrence of Arabia. He's a mythical figure. He's like Thor in the Avengers. The Danger Zone. Yeah, you know, Will, it's a good point. The Danger Zone. I don't know what that point is, but the game's fine. Battlefield 1 is fine. Should have been here earlier when I had the 10-hour epic sax song just playing. That's my pre-show music now. Just listen to this saxophone solo. Yeah, this first one really has a lot of cutscenes and really kind of gets you into it. The others aren't as fleshed out in terms of plot. Interesting that they did that. Alright, Will, feel free to dictate where this goes for the next 15 minutes as I watch this cutscene. Well, if you're not going to say anything, then we're going to end. So I'm going to do the wrap up. This is your punishment. How much dirt there is.